Why is April 16, 1947 an important date in Texas history? Because that's the day one of the worst disasters in our history occurred. We'll talk about it next on Historically Texas. On April 16, 1947, a ship named the SS Grand Camp was docked at the port of Texas City. The French-owned vessel was originally christened as the SS Benjamin R. Curtis in Los Angeles on November 3rd, 1942. As part of the Liberty ships that were the backbone of the American supply chain during World War II. In January of 1947, it was decommissioned and sold to France to aid in Europe's restoration. The French line renamed the vessel the SS Grand Camp after the beach at Normandy. The ship had been docked in Texas City for 5 days after making several stops on its voyage to Texas. In Belgium, it had picked up 16 cases of small arms ammunition loaded in cargo hold number 4, and was also loading and unloading various items like twine and peanuts in the ports of Cuba and Houston. In Texas City, however, it was taking on a load of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. The chemical was manufactured by the U.S. War Department in ordnance plants in Iowa and Nebraska and was shipped by rail to Texas City. The chemical was packed in 100-pound bags and mixed with rosin to prevent caking. Warm temperatures may have increased the reactivity of the substance along the way, but the weather in Texas was a cool 56 degrees, with a wind out of the north-northwest at 20 miles an hour. Several of the longshoremen remembered the bags being warm to the touch when it arrived. During World War II, ammonium nitrate was used to make TNT, but after the war, it was diluted and used as fertilizer for crops. In its purest form, it's not flammable, but it must be kept cool. It becomes dangerous when combined with an explosive agent, like a blasting cap. By way of comparison, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols used the same chemical mixed with diesel fuel and other chemicals loaded in a U-Haul 48 years and 3 days later to perpetrate a terrorist attack, killing 168 and injuring more than 600 when they blew up the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City. On this Wednesday, a fire started in cargo hold number 5. Less than a quarter inch of steel separated the fertilizer from the ammo. Almost all of the Texas City Fire Department was there at 9:11 a.m. fighting the fire. A large group of people, including school-aged kids, had gathered on the dock to watch all the excitement, when a minute later, the ship exploded, sending a fireball 2,000 feet in the air in a mushroom cloud that loomed over the city. The explosion ignited a fire at the Monsanto chemical plant and destroyed the dock. A second ship, named the High Flyer, was anchored at the main slip of Pier A, directly adjacent to the Grand Camp. It sustained minimal damage from the explosion, but was jolted enough to release the High Flyer from its moorings, leaving it adrift. A third ship, the Wilson B. Keene, was docked at Pier B and was loading flour. The High Flyer contained 1,000 tons of ammonium nitrate and 2,000 tons of sulfur in holds 2 and 4. This is significant because ammonium nitrate becomes much more volatile when mixed with sulfur. As the High Flyer drifted dangerously close to the Grand Camp, a second explosion became a real fear. The crew tried to raise the anchor and have tugboats pull the ship away from the burning vessel, but they were unable to because it had become wedged in place. The crew abandoned ship and the High Flyer ultimately caught fire. At 1:10 a.m. on April 17th, the High Flyer exploded. 15 hours after the first explosion, killing 2 people. The second explosion wrecked the Keene and spewed more shrapnel, flaming debris, and cargo into the air. The second explosion had limited casualties because it was expected, but between the 2 fireballs, the Monsanto chemical plant, other small businesses, grain warehouses, and numerous oil and chemical storage tanks, along with the entire dock area, were destroyed. The percussion of the initial explosion caused a 15-foot tidal wave and was felt as far away as Port Arthur. Other smaller fires and explosions were caused by flying shrapnel and fiery debris, and it took firefighters a week to get all the fires under control. The first explosion killed 26 Texas City firemen and destroyed all the city's firefighting equipment, including 4 trucks, and basically leaving the city helpless in the wake of the second explosion. There was no central disaster organization established by the city. However, most of the chemical plants had disaster plans. The Red Cross and other cities provided volunteers until a rescue force of almost 4,000 were operating temporary hospitals, morgues, and shelters. The exact number of people killed will never be known. Although the ship's anchor monument records 576 persons known dead, 398 of which were identified, and 178 missing. Almost all the persons on the deck area, firemen, ship's crew, and spectators, were killed, and most of those bodies were never recovered. 63 bodies were buried as unidentified, and the number of injured ranged in the thousands. The 3,200-pound anchor from the Grand Camp was found over a mile and a half away, near Dyke Road, in a 10-foot crater. It now stands as a monument to those who died in a memorial park. Total loss of property was $67 million, and litigations were finally settled in 1962. Congress settled all the claims for a total of $16.5 million, and housing, docks, warehouses, and chemical plants were all rebuilt by 1950. Of course, new standards and regulations were passed to better respond to disasters like this. A wall of remembrance was built in Memorial Park, listing the names of those who lost their lives that day. Monsanto, which had sustained the worst damage, was the first refinery to rebuild, followed by many other companies. Celebrities like Jack Benny and Frank Sinatra and others performed fundraisers and generated thousands of dollars in support. So much was donated that the Texas City Mayor Trahan appointed committees to distribute aid. Insurance companies, many themselves damaged by the disaster, set up makeshift offices and started filing thousands of claims within days of the disaster. The support for the city and its people in the wake of this horrible episode in Texas history was tremendous. And as of the 2010 census, the population of Texas City had become home to about 45,000 people, and the city is still growing. The petrochemical industry remains a major factor in the city and the state's economies. The people of Texas City are very resilient, and yet they still take time to remember this tragic day in April of 1947. I know this story is not necessarily in the same timeline. I had a request from a subscriber and wanted to tell this story of loss and how Texans handle adversity. Also, I would like to thank all the first responders that day after day put their lives on the line to keep us all safe. I know this has gone pretty long, but I felt this story needed to be told. Thanks for sticking until the end, and as always, God bless Texas, y'all.